Thank you, Dr. Sun. Our next speaker is 2Tenby POWELL. 2Tenby sits on the APEC Business Advisory Council and is chair of the Small Business Development Group of the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, New Zealand. He's held senior management positions in Fletcher Challenge and the Scalar-Up Group prior to forming Hunter Powell Investment Partners. 2Tenby is chairman and on the board of a number of organisations, including Waikato Link Limited, Antarctica New Zealand, and Angel Link, which is a national angel investment network to back New Zealand high-growth technology ventures with an emphasis on life sciences, engineering and ICT. And 2Tenby has also served in the New Zealand Army and holds the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Thank you, 2Tenby.
Kia ora, Joe. Thank you. Tēnā te mihi kia tautu nā tangata whenua i te whare, tēnā rau koutou katoa. Ina mana, ina rio, ina iwi, ina hau e whā. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ni hao and greetings to all the leaders who have come here today in this, for this important meeting, or hui, as we say in New Zealand. I suspect after the negotiations of 2 weeks ago on the CPTPP in Da Nang, these discussions will have become even more poignant for all of you and all of us who are here today. It is an honour for me to be with you today. I've recently returned, as Joe said, from APEC meetings in Da Nang, representing New Zealand on the APEC Business Advisory Council, and we did indeed breathe a sigh of relief at getting the comprehensive and progressive TPP across the line, reached by the 11 member economies who were in the original TPP 11. And following APEC, we are meeting here today at a very decisive time, both for New Zealand, with the new government now in office for only 1 month, and indeed for China, following the 19th Party Congress and a renewed focus on the Belt and Road Initiative. Both governments, like others around the world, are concerned with one fundamental question: how to ensure national security and prosperity, and how to fashion the international environment in such a way that it promotes peaceful and respectful foreign relations, as well as sustainable and inclusive growth. That is, of course, a very big question. So what impact will Belt and Road have on and for New Zealand, and how we as New Zealanders, how can we contribute to this strategic concept that has broadened out considerably to focus on a vision for enhanced connectivity between China and the rest of the world? Belt and Road has been described by many as a new way of managing globalisation, a more inclusive model as opposed to a model based just on technology and trade liberalisation. Inclusivity will be key in a world where globalisation has left many behind, by not proportionally sharing that prosperity. And this morning, the Honourable Essam Sharif, the former Prime Minister of Egypt, I think said very, very clearly that the BRI is a catalyst of change through cross-cultural dialogue, and I can't agree with that more. Cross-cultural dialogue between all peoples is going to be critically important. Shukran jazeela. As co-chair of the ABAC SME and Entrepreneurial Working Group, I can share with you that among our work streams is that of accelerating economic, financial and social inclusion. And the social inclusion part of that is really very important to us. Fundamentally, this is recognition that while globalisation, regional integration and the rapid development of technology has led to dramatic growth and the rise of living standards across the Asia-Pacific region, these gains have not been spread evenly, leaving behind a large segment of the APEC population who have yet to reap the full effects of globalisation. I believe a key challenge for New Zealand with Belt and Road will be ensuring that the benefits of this initiative, and indeed that of any FTA, impacts positively for the majority of New Zealanders. And we heard again this morning, Honourable Minister Hu said that the community is affected by globalisation. And indeed, President Xi has said previously that strategic integration and through its development, the BRI will be an initiative for peace, prosperity, openness and civilisation. And I think it's important that we remember it's not just about the economics of BRI, it's about the effect it has on all people. China clearly sees the Belt and Road as a way of showing leadership on globalisation at a time when others, especially the US, might be seen to be retreating inwards. And I have to say, I sat through at APEC really a very historical speech where President Trump spoke for about 40 minutes on the US withdrawing inwardly, about pulling up drawbridges, about building walls, and I quote, about defending our own countries. And he said it to all of us. Then there was a 20-minute break. And then President Xi got up and he talked about exactly the opposite for another 40 minutes, about opening arms, about sharing wealth and creativity, about working together passionately to create a prosperous and peaceful economic environment through the initiative that we call Belt and Road. It was as if the world had been flipped on its head, and that the leader of the so-called leader of the free world is talking about closing up shop, and President Xi magnificently talked about business very much opening up in every regard. And while Belt and Road does have its detractors, I think we would all agree that it is not going away. It's supported at the highest level of the Chinese government, is coordinated by the National Reform Development Commission, and judging by communications from Party Congress, is now seen as a central pillar of China's economic strategy. For New Zealand, Belt and Road potentially represents a great opportunity, an opportunity to demonstrate how New Zealand expertise and interests can add value and contribute to China's vision on the international stage. It's no secret that New Zealand's relationship with China has developed rapidly in recent years to the stage of comprehensive strategic partnership. This has been the result largely of some famous firsts, as we've discussed this morning. The first being the first developed country economy to sign an FTA, and now the first developed economy to upgrade that FTA. China is New Zealand's largest trading partner for export and second largest trading partner for imports. The New Zealand-China FTA is effectively a treaty between New Zealand and China that liberalises and facilitates trade in goods and services, improves the business environment, promotes cooperation between the two countries in a broad range of economic areas. New Zealand's trade relationship with China has nearly tripled over the past decade, with two-way trade rising from $8.2 billion in 2007 to the $23 billion it was in 2016 and rising. Annual imports to China have quadrupled, and annual imports to China have doubled since 2007. By any measure, trade, investment, tourism, education, scientific cooperation and people-to-people exchanges, the relationship continues to expand. It's also true that New Zealand now faces greater competition for China's attention. It's not surprising that other countries with superior resources and arguably greater connections or deeper connections have lifted their game. Australia, for example, has negotiated a very good free trade agreement with China, and New Zealand needs to be cognizant of that. The Memorandum of Arrangement signed between the New Zealand and Chinese governments provides a mechanism for New Zealand to define how we can contribute to Belt and Road while under this framework for a bilateral cooperation. And while the Memorandum of Arrangement is largely aspirational, it sets a timetable of 18 months for its development to complete. And it's interesting to see the emphasis on the MOA is connectivity rather than infrastructure. And for those that were in the lunch we just had, this is very important, I think, for me anyway, to realise that New Zealand doesn't have the might, the infrastructural might that many other countries have. But what we do have is some other great things. New Zealand's infrastructure needs might be acutely important to us domestically, but they barely register on a strategic scale when viewed in the context of Belt and Road. Therefore, arguably, it's more likely that the greater benefits for New Zealand will be in soft infrastructure, the way goods, services, capital and people move along the belt rather than the development of the road itself. New Zealand has a wide policy expertise and services to offer in this area, which matches a number of policy areas China has also highlighted for Belt and Road, including policy coordination, investment and trade facilitation, and cultural and social exchange. Areas where New Zealand can contribute to Belt and Road include trade facilitation, supply chain connectivity, innovation and trade policy, and regulatory cooperation. In respect of this, it's important to acknowledge the work the New Zealand-China Council, in concert with the Asia-New Zealand Foundation, has completed in developing a strategic pathway to help identify the opportunities, which include a report a report that highlights opportunities according to New Zealand's comparative advantage, the development of further web-based materials to highlight these opportunities for New Zealand stakeholders, and a process of outreach to New Zealand business and other stakeholders to further develop these areas. And of course, there are risks to New Zealand. And Fran O'Sullivan mentioned this earlier on in his summary. We need to be cautious as a very small country. One obvious risk to us using Belt and Road is an opportunity to reposition our relationship with China to the detriment of the CPTPP and any bilateral FTA, be it current or be it future. Another risk for New Zealand is ensuring that Belt and Road, or indeed our FTA with China, doesn't replace other important relationships and arrangements with the rest of the world. This was highlighted only last week at the Japan-New Zealand Business Conference in Osaka that I attended. And at the end of the day, New Zealand and China have had a relationship dating back to the 1840s, not just the 70s. And in many respects, Belt and Road is a new and exciting opportunity to further strengthen this relationship. Thank you very much.